Okay, let's get stuck in. Ben Mulroney, first of all, thank you so very much for joining me in what is a very new world for me, but talking to
Yeah.
people like you, incredibly impressive people, is not. So it's lovely to get back to what I do, but in a slightly different format.
Well, thank you, Erin. The honor is all mine. I've watched you as you've met the moment in a way that few do. You know, we oftentimes ask ourselves, what would we do if we heard cries and cries of a child in a building that's on fire? Would we run towards it? You've proven that you would run towards it, so you have my respect forever.
I see that means so much. It really does. So thank you. Why do you care so much? And I know the answer, but I want my audience to answer why you care so much. And I assume you're talking about my reaction post October 7 and
Yeah.
what has happened in the world since, which has been unbelievable.
Well, well. First of all, my wife is Jewish. Half of my family, therefore, is Jewish. But it comes from my father, and I'm right now. I'm in his den right now. You asked the question, and I just realized there's a picture I'll show you. Stand by for 1 sec. I'll be right back because you want to see this.
I
Okay,
would
so
love that.
so so years ago, when I was much younger, my father, I was staying with my parents at their house here in Montreal, and my dad told me he said he needed me to be his date to a speech he was giving. And I didn't want to go because it was a beautiful summer day, but I ended up going, and it was a speech that stuck with me forever. And here is a picture from that day of me and my dad, and it was about 20 years ago, 20, even more than that. And my dad gave a speech in the basement of a synagogue here in Montreal, where he outlined his belief that in this world where every now and then the specter of anti-Semitism raises its and rears its ugly head, it had morphed and matured into something a little more sophisticated. And the thrust of the speech was Israel is the new Jew. And it stuck with me forever. And then fast forward to the very last speech he gave before he passed away. It was right after October 7th, and he had been awarded the Theodore Herzl Award by the World Jewish Congress in New York City. He's the only Canadian to ever receive that award. And he took that speech and he updated it. And I found out from my mother, he had been giving that speech and working on that speech since this day. And for him, there was, first of all, it's about standing with your Democratic allies. Second of all, it is my father didn't respect bullies. Third, he believed that for freedom to be extinguished, people like him had to do nothing. And he remembered a time where, as an Irishman, there were signs in certain places, in certain businesses, where it said Irish need not apply, and it requires constant care to ensure that sort of marginalization and that sort of racism is tamped out permanently. And so he viewed it as his moral obligation. He viewed it as he felt a kinship to the Jewish people, and so for me, it's a very easy hill to die on.
I agree entirely, and I think you're right. It's not even a decision that you make.
No.
I can't envisage how anyone could wake up after October 7, particularly, and everything else aside, and think, gee, now which side am I
Yeah.
going to support? I mean, it's crazy. And you're a human being, of course, as well. I love that your dad has played such an incredibly big role in your life and helped shape you in
Yeah.
so many ways. And I guess most people's parents do in one way or another. But when your father is in public life, he's led your country, he was the former Prime Minister. Would he be immensely proud, do you think, of you now and the public stance you are taking in this space? Because I think we may come from two
Yeah.
of the worst countries when it comes to
Yeah.
publicity and global media regarding
Yeah.
the reaction to October 7.
Oh, yeah. Canada, the perception of Canada has taken a significant hit, and for good reason. The rise of anti-Semitic attacks in Canada has gone up 200-fold, something like that. The great irony is, poll after poll suggests that 80% of Canadians do not agree with the pro-Hamas wing that screams and shuts down streets and taunts Jews where they live. and yet it's a silent majority that should no longer be silent. And so Canada is not Canada the good as it once was, at least in the eyes of a great many people. And would Dad be proud? I'd like to think that even at my worst, he was proud of me. And so I don't believe I am. I'm at my worst right now, and I'm I do think he'd be proud. I think he'd be proud of me. But we all four of his kids live up to what we think are his values in our own ways, and so I'm doing what I can in my own way.
I think that's really beautifully said, and everyone watching who's a regular viewer of mine will know the big role that Dad played in my life and just how close he and I were and what an incredible human being he was. But I think I can very much relate to that. I'm not sure if he was always entirely proud at my worst. There were moments I stole his military vehicle to take my girlfriend underage night clubbing. He had to helicopter.
Yes, I never did that. Yeah, because
proud vibes that night. I got a lot else, but not the proud vibes. But no, I think I have no doubt he would be immensely proud of you. Tell me about Canada, because it's one of the things I constantly get asked about is Australia. And what I say to people, and you alluded to it as well, in terms of the vast majority of your country not aligning themselves with this small minority. I talk about it like I was a sports host for 15 years and I would cover the Bathurst 1000, a car race. It'd be 10 hours long. And there'd be 99% of cars who'd be perfect. There'd be 1% who'd crash. And all I'd show in my news package at the end of the day, or 1 minute package, would be the crashes, because it was, the most spectacle and the most exciting, the most dramatic. Yeah. And I say the same thing. I genuinely believe the vast majority of Australians condemn and stand vehemently against Hamas.
Yeah, if it bleeds, it leads, right? That's sort of what the world we've been living in for years, even prior to the internet. And so, there's something that's gone on. I do believe the pendulum is swinging back. When the Hamas protesters started taking over our streets with impunity whenever they wanted, shutting down traffic, protesting in front of hospitals, specifically a Jewish hospital, but that was just a coincidence. I was a big proponent on shutting it down, and I spoke with a number of lawyers and friends of mine sort of on our side of the equation who said, look, the laws are clear, but for some reason the police are not enforcing them. Everything that they're doing they should be backing up the paddy wagon and just arresting them en masse. And I heard early on from the police and from politicians, well, they don't want to escalate. And my reaction was, well, someone is going to escalate. Either the police escalate by arresting, or you leave them be and they move the line. And that's what we've seen. Now we're living in a world where it's been normalized for these protests to take place in residential areas where Jews live. The traditionally Jewish communities in the city of Toronto and other parts of the country are now, these people descend on them. And I absolutely believe it is to intimidate them. It is to tell them, we know where you live. We can get to you anytime we want. And the police, God love the frontline police officers who put their lives on the line every day. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the orders that come from above that tell them do nothing. Sit there stand there like bystanders and just let it happen.
You talk about things coming from above. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's a country, if it's Microsoft, or if it's a corner store. The culture is set. The tone is set at the top in terms of what you will accept as a country, as a business, as an organisation. And I think we've failed miserably in Australia in terms of setting a tone for what our country will accept when it comes to anti-Semitism in this country and a whole lot else. What has Justin Trudeau done in any way, shape or form to help?
Not too much. Not too much. He said that he would accept the International Court of Justice's request to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu for war crimes were he to ever set foot in Canada. He would send one of his ministers out to Islamic communities to say one thing, and Jewish members of parliament from his caucus to talk to Jews and say something completely different. He and his ilk were calling for a ceasefire days after the raping and burning and murdering that happened on October 7th. And so that is the tone that was set. And despite that, he thinking he could make everybody happy, he made no one happy. I'm an opinion person on radio in Canada. So I tell people what my opinions are. They can either choose to follow me or not. I will explain myself as best I can. I believe that there is only one politician on this file that has acquitted himself with honor, and that is Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party of Canada. They've been unequivocal. They've had the courage of their convictions. They stand with Israel 100%. They know that Hamas is a cancer, and you do not cure cancer at 85% or 99%. You cure cancer by cutting the entire tumor out. And that is what Hamas is, and that is what he is, that is what he supports. And so there is that level of moral clarity that has not only been absent from the Liberal Party, but the exact opposite has been true of, say, the NDP, for example, who wear keffiyehs in the House of Commons. And it's a sad state of affairs on the left in Canada, at least on this file.
Talk to me about a likely change in government. What's happening? What's support like? What's next?
Well, we are living through a real life soap opera in Canada because Justin Trudeau said he was going to resign, and we all knew we needed an election in Canada because with Donald Trump coming in and his looming threat of punishing Canada's economy for whatever reason, I don't know. We needed a government with a strong mandate to fight back. But he didn't give us that. Instead, he subjected Canada to the soap opera that has been the Liberal Party leadership contest. And the politics that they have been playing, the choices that they have made, the fact that they have chosen party over country, and they feel that it is incumbent upon Canada to press pause while this threat is looming like the iceberg in front of the Titanic, tells me everything I need to know. However, these people are very smart. There's a reason that the Liberal Party of Canada is the single most successful political brand in the Western world. They have governed Canada longer than any party has governed any Western country. And that is because they are willing to do and say anything to get elected. And if it means playing politics with an existential threat, with the health of our economy, they will do it. And the result has been a narrowing of the polls between Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives and whoever is going to lead the Liberals. I don't believe that will hold. I believe ultimately an election campaign will test the mettle of whoever leads the Liberal Party, and Pierre Poilievre, who has been training for this for decades, will come out the victor. But I don't have a crystal ball.
Talk to me about Donald Trump. What are your thoughts on the man himself, and further to that, what's happened regarding his rhetoric regarding Canada and the 51st state and all this kind of stuff? How does that sit with you?
Well, not well. Listen. I take the view that he has a strong mandate from the people of the United States. I respect that. He was brought in to do a particular job. This, however, was not what he was elected on. This was not part of the platform. This is new stuff. And in my opinion, as somebody who he does not represent, and therefore I do not believe he deserves the respect from me that he probably does from people south of the border. He's been moving the goalposts. He's been playing a shell game with us. Every time we think we've dealt with the problem, he says there's a different reason. And so there's something else going on here. I'm not quite sure what it is. But look, we saw how he treated Zelensky in the Oval Office. So this is not somebody who wants to play by traditional rules. I do hope that ultimately the data will sway him. At some point, people in his cabinet and governors that trade directly with Canada, who rely on Canada, will tell him, if you proceed with 25% tariffs and Canada reciprocates with 25% tariffs of their own, you are going to shut down entire parts of our economy. You are going to break the economy in certain places. The automotive industry, for example, where in order to make a car in North America, parts have to go across the border as many as 9 times before they actually become an automobile. Every single time subject to 25% tariffs. So the people in Michigan will not be happy with him when all of a sudden they just shut off the machines and say, too expensive. And so I'm hoping that the data comes in and sways him, because thus far, charm and rational arguments have not.
Is your sovereignty at stake in Canada, do you think? Is that how big
No,
this threat is?
no. I am forever bullish on Canada. I do believe that we've experienced a lost generation because of the Trudeau Liberals, 9 years of trying to reimagine Canada as a post-national state with no core identity, where we are ashamed of our history, where we leave the natural resources that God gave us in the ground, where we subdivide ourselves into silos depending on gender, ethnicity, cultural community, language, sexuality. That the pendulum is swinging away from that. And so, yes, we've lost a lot of time and a lot of people have been hurt, but I will forever be bullish on the values that Canada has stood for, our shared history, our ability, as my dad used to say, to punch above our weight. We are a great nation that is experiencing a less than great era, but that can change. Anybody who suggests that it would be simple to simply fold Canada into the United States hasn't thought for 2 seconds about the history of our country, doesn't know anything about the history of our country, and because of that, I discount everything they say.
A couple more. I know your time is very precious. I want to ask you about your beautiful wife and how, Jessica, and how hard it is watching someone from the Jewish community go through what every single person within that community is going through at the moment, and how she is going with this all. Because, I mean, you're not Jewish, I'm not Jewish, but I see firsthand daily that this is not just Jews in Israel. This is Jews everywhere that are hurting deeply. It's that everyone is traumatized.
Well, Jews have been at the tip of the sword of social justice for generations. They have been there for every community that was marginalized. They have marched, they have walked, they have mobilized, they have organized, they have fundraised. And in their time of need, when it was their turn to ask for help or expect help, a lot of that help didn't show up. And so there's a level of hurt there, a deep personal hurt with a number of the Jews I know, including my wife. And so, people are asking themselves, I thought we were in this together. And so the disappointment, the sadness that a number of the Jews in my life feel is real, and it's not going to go away anytime soon.
Any chance of you entering politics? And I'm sure, I mean, my dad wasn't Prime Minister, but I've been asked 10 billion times. I'm sure you have as well. Is there anything that attracts you to it?
No. I think you have to have a fire in your belly for it. I think the best politicians don't just see the problem before them. They see a solution that they want to bring to bear on that problem. I don't see solutions. I like to chirp from the cheap seats. I think my value in society is to further conversation. Yeah. And I look to my sister, who just yesterday was part of the Progressive Conservative government in Ontario. They won their third consecutive majority. My sister is the hardest working person I know. The most good to her core. Somebody who works diligently, dutifully, and 24 hours a day for her constituents. And I don't know. I like my free time a little too much.
No. I think that's the most honest answer and most entertaining I've heard to that question. Now, I'm coming to Canada in a couple of weeks to speak.
Are you?
Toronto, in Montreal, and Vancouver. So I need to also, what do I need to do when I'm there, apart from try and survive that very loud, mean minority that seems to take up all of your airspace?
Yes, yeah. I would say, listen, I'll reach out to you a little closer to let you know what the weather's going to be like, because it might have turned. Toronto is quite mild. Montreal is a little colder. Vancouver is always more mild, a little wetter. So you're gonna have to pack for.
Let me just, what I'm trying to say is, can I borrow your wife's wardrobe?
Oh, of course you can. Please take it out of the house. There's so much of it. Please.
Okay, I'll do you a favor. Last really quick thing. Tomorrow is the anniversary of your dad's death, and I'm so sorry. I look at it as I still feel the same amount of pain from the day that I lost Dad, but what a privilege to hurt so badly. I would not give it up for a second, any pain, because he was so incredible. What do you miss most about your dad? if you don't mind sharing with me.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about that earlier today. So my dad was a labor lawyer, and so he knew how to negotiate. He was a shrewd negotiator. And there have been pockets of time in my life where, as we talked about earlier, I wasn't necessarily the best version of myself. And Dad had a sixth sense to know to call me when I was in those periods. But because of his negotiating style and his ability to lull people into a false sense of security, he would call me and we would have an hour phone call where we would talk about all manner of fun and the kids and the jobs and the travels and the this and that. And just when I thought I was getting off the phone with him and thought I dodged a bullet, he would drop the hammer. He would drop the hammer. And in the moment, it irritated me. But to know that he cared about me that much, to know that he was that invested in me when he had so many other balls in the air, I mean, I hope that when the epitaph of my life is written, my kids say I was 1/10 as good a father as my dad was.
That is so beautiful. And I promise I'm not trying to relate to everything you say, but so much of it is so relatable. Even yesterday, can I thank you for saying that, because I've got the best mum in the world. She was the only person better than Dad, and they were together for 50 years. Yeah. She will call and say that last video you did, or that piece, or that column you wrote was incredible. Or, yesterday she said it was strong. It was really impressive. Oh gosh, you're so clever with language and blah. And I know it's coming, but that top you wore, and it drives me crazy because I've had 20 years of people telling me how to dress but you're actually right. It means she deeply cares, and I will miss that desperately. So I'm going to show a lot more patience with her next time.
Absolutely.
Ben Mulroney, thank you so much. Where can my audience and viewers and listeners get your podcast from your radio show and follow you?
Thank you. On Twitter and on Instagram, I'm at Ben Mulroney. And if they go to wherever they get their podcasts, on Amazon, on Apple Podcasts, or on Spotify, they just search up Ben Mulroney or The Ben Mulroney Show.
Amazing. You are a legend. Thank you so, so much. And hopefully I'll get
to catch up with
you guys when I'm in town.
Oh, I hope we do. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Erin.